Provinces across Canada continue to bleed red ink amid economic uncertainty. And today, another province unveiled a budget with a big deficit. In recent weeks, we've seen BC reveal a $13 billion shortfall. For Alberta, it was over $9 billion. Nova Scotia was $1.2 billion. That's before its premier walked back some planned cuts. And today, New Brunswick released its budget with a $1.4 billion deficit. And it's not just this year. New Brunswick's plan says it will run deficits almost that high for the next 3 years. Before the end of the decade, that would boost the province's total debt from almost $14 billion to almost $20 billion. So is global uncertainty breaking the finances of Canada's provinces? And what could that mean for Canadians? Joining me now is René Legacy, New Brunswick's Minister of Finance. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So during the election campaign, Premier Holt promised to balance the budget for every year of her term. You've tabled a document today that essentially shows the opposite, right? A record high deficit, $1.37 billion at the end of this fiscal year, deficits for your entire mandate. What happened?
Well, considering that when we were campaigning at the time, we were facing large surpluses. So the discussion at the time was, what would we do with the surpluses? And we said we would try to reinvest without necessarily going in deficit. We understand now that, geopolitical situations have changed. We're facing a whole other specter of issues. But what we didn't expect is those surpluses that happened before we got elected were certainly at a cost. There's a lot of our essential services that needed some serious investments, and that's what we did today, mostly around healthcare.
The Premier kind of prepared the province for difficult decisions, but given some of these higher deficits we're talking about, what exactly are the difficult decisions and the cuts that you've made in this budget to stay fiscally responsible? Because it seems like most departments are not going to have a steep cut.
No, we're actually focusing more on the public service, very much like other provinces, other jurisdictions. Because of our net debt to GDP ratio, we have a little bit of an open window where we can be more strategic with our tactics, or if you want, our savings initiatives. That window won't be open for long, but we can do it right now. We had a difficult decisions document go out. Those discussions aren't over. We've announced a few today where we're cutting 1,300 Part 1 employees within the next 3 years, and there's a couple of other services. But we're still continuing on those discussions because those out years that you just mentioned, we're still hoping and we're looking to curve that even further.
I want to ask you about Nova Scotia, because you've probably seen that the Premier there, Tim Houston, really faced a big backlash when he proposed pretty deep cuts. He was suggesting that there be $300 million less in spending. He had to walk some of that back. Right now he is saying that 50 million of those cuts will not happen, and he's apologized. Did seeing some of that backlash that Tim Houston faced, did that make you rethink your plan for this budget?
Not really. Our original plan was always to have discussions with New Brunswickers and have open dialogue to see what we could do. Nova Scotia is in a bit of a different situation than we are. Their net debt to ratio is a little higher, so there's a little bit more pressure on their end to do immediate cuts. We have a little bit more time, not much, but our original plan, even as we started the process, was always to have open discussions and try to work with stakeholders and various community groups to find the right path forward to make sure that those savings and those different ways of doing doing government are sustainable, that we're not just slashing and then having to change or seeing some backfilling going on.
One guy who doesn't think it's necessarily sustainable is economist Richard Saillant. He had a statement out today, or at least some analysis of your budget, and he says it's highly irresponsible, a complete dereliction of duty. The track the province is on is completely unsustainable. How would you reassure him and others who are concerned about these deficits that you've got a path back to fiscal sustainability?
Yeah, I fully understand where Richard is coming from, although right now we're looking at very much the top lines. Having been in the process for a few months and going line by line, I could tell you it is very hard to find any kind of wasteful spending in this budget. Pretty much every line that we've added is very necessary to provide services to New Brunswickers. So it is, when we talk about a structural deficit, it means that we're going to have to look at structure. We're really going to have to get it at a granular level and really start looking at how we offer services, because pretty much everything we've announced today is very much needed and very much required to provide services.
One of those services, of course, healthcare. That seems to be the centerpiece of your budget today. $710 million. It's a 17% increase over what you had budgeted last year, although I take it you overspent what you had said it would be, so it's more like a 6% increase, but still a sizable increase in terms of what you've allocated to healthcare. Obviously, if you've been following the federal conversation here in Ottawa, you know healthcare really is not top of mind for the Prime Minister and his government right now. He's distracted with some other issues. But do you think that Ottawa needs to do more to help provinces, especially those in the Maritimes, that are grappling with really high healthcare costs right now?
Well, I do think, but I would add that in my conversations with my colleagues across the country, all the other finance ministers, health is always one of the first issues that we have a discussion on. Yes, the maritime provinces need probably a little bit more help because our population is aging a little quicker than the rest of the country. But I would say pretty much every finance minister is grappling with healthcare costs in the country right now. So yeah, if it's going to be a problem in every province, then probably the federal government should be involved.
We talked off the top about how it's not just New Brunswick. Provinces all across the country are revealing big budget deficits, $13 billion in BC, $9 billion in Alberta, $1.2 billion in Nova Scotia. Do you think that we are looking at a broader crisis with provincial finances right now, given some of this red ink that's being spilled?
I do. I think there's a transition happening right now, and also on the solutions side or doing things differently. I think we're going to hear a lot more about opening up our economies to grow. We need to start with that. We've seen it, especially in Ontario, I would say, and Alberta. But we're also going to start talking about looking at different ways of offering services, maybe using more technology. There's other ways maybe that we need to explore. And I think that is it's coast to coast. Everybody's talking about it.
All right, let's leave it there. René Legacy, New Brunswick's Minister of Finance. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much.